Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
The small town of B, with just 2 or 3 curvy streets, was fast asleep. The air was completely still. The only sound was far off, a dog barking in a thin, rough voice. It was almost sunrise. Everyone in town was asleep except for Mrs. Chernamordic, the wife of the chemist who owned the town's pharmacy. She had gone to bed and gotten up 3 times, but couldn't sleep. She didn't know why. She sat by the open window in her nightclothes, looking out at the street. She felt bored, sad, and irritated, so irritated that she felt like crying, though she didn't know why. She felt a lump in her chest that kept rising to her throat. A few steps away, Mr. Chernamordic was curled up against the wall, snoring softly. A flea was annoying him by biting his nose, but he didn't notice because he was dreaming that everyone in town had a cough and was buying cough drops from him. He couldn't be woken up by anything, not even by being poked or kissed. Their pharmacy was near the edge of town, so Mrs. Chernamordic could see far out into the fields. She watched as the eastern sky slowly turned pale, then bright crimson like a big fire. A large round moon appeared unexpectedly from behind some bushes in the distance. It looked red. When the moon comes out from behind bushes, it seems to blush. Suddenly, in the quiet of the night, she heard footsteps and the jingling of spurs. She could hear voices. That must be the officers going back to their camp from the police captains, thought Mrs. Chernamordic. Soon, 2 men in white military uniforms came into view. One was big and tall, the other shorter and thinner. They walked slowly by the fence, dragging their feet and talking loudly. As they passed the pharmacy, they slowed down and looked up at the windows. "It smells like a pharmacy," said the thin one. "And it is." I remember. I was here last week to buy some castor oil. There's a chemist here with a sour face and a big jaw like an S. Such a jaw, my dear friend. It must be like the jaw Samson used to defeat the Philistines. "Yes," said the big one in a deep voice. "The pharmacist is asleep. His wife is asleep too. She's a pretty woman, Obtyasov. I saw her. I really liked her. Tell me, doctor, could she possibly love that big-jawed pharmacist? Could she?" "No, she probably does not love him," sighed the doctor, sounding sad for the chemist. "The little woman is asleep behind the window, Obtyasov." "What?" Tossing and turning because of the heat, her little mouth half open and one little foot hanging out of bed. "I bet that foolish chemist doesn't realize how lucky he is. He probably sees no difference between a woman and a bottle of carbolic." "I say, doctor," said the officer, stopping. "Let's go into the shop and buy something. Maybe we will see her." What an idea in the night. So what? They have to serve customers even at night. "My dear friend, let's go in, if you like." The chemist's wife, hiding behind the curtain, heard a soft ring. Looking at her husband, who was still smiling and snoring, she put on her dress, slipped her bare feet into her slippers, and ran to the shop. On the other side of the glass door, she could see 2 shadows. The chemist's wife turned up the lamp and hurried to open the door. Now she did not feel irritated, bored, or like crying, though her heart was pounding. The big doctor and the thin Obtyasov walked in. Now she could see them clearly. The doctor was fat and dark. He had a beard and moved slowly. His shirt looked like it might rip with any movement, and sweat covered his face. The officer had rosy cheeks, was clean-shaven, looked feminine, and was as flexible as an English whip. "What can I get you?" asked the chemist's wife, holding her dress across her chest. "Give us, 4 pennyworth of peppermint lozenges." Slowly, the chemist's wife took down a jar from a shelf and began weighing out the lozenges. The customers stared at her back. The doctor squinted like a satisfied cat, while the officer looked very serious. "It's the first time I've seen a lady serving in a chemist's shop," said the doctor. "There's nothing strange about it," replied the chemist's wife, glancing at the rosy-cheeked officer. "My husband has no assistant, and I always help him." "Of course. You have a charming little shop. So many different jars. And you're not afraid of moving around the poisons?" "BRRR." The chemist's wife sealed up the package and handed it to the doctor. Obtyasov gave her the money. Half a minute of silence followed. The men exchanged glances, took a step towards the door, then looked at each other again. "Will you give me 2 pennyworth of soda?" said the doctor. Again, the chemist's wife slowly and lazily raised her hand to the shelf. "Don't you have anything in the shop like something, let's say, refreshing? Seltzer water, for example. Do you have any seltzer water?" "Yes," answered the chemist's wife. "Bravo! You're amazing. Give us 3 bottles." The chemist's wife quickly sealed the soda and disappeared into the dark room. "She's great," said the doctor with a wink. "You wouldn't find anyone like her even in Madeira." "Eh? What do you think?" "Do you hear the snoring, though? That's the chemist sleeping peacefully." A minute later, the chemist's wife came back and put 5 bottles on the counter. She had just been in the cellar, so her face was red and she was a bit excited. "Sure." "Quietly," said Obtyasov when, after opening the bottles, she dropped the corkscrew. "Don't make such a noise. You'll wake your husband." "Well, what if I do wake him?" "He is sleeping so sweetly. He must be dreaming of you." "Cheers." "Besides," boomed the doctor, hiccuping after drinking the seltzer water, "husbands are so boring that it would be very nice if they were always asleep." "How good a drop of red wine would be in this water." "What an idea," laughed the chemist's wife. "That would be great. What a pity they don't sell alcohol in chemists' shops. Though you should sell wine as a medicine. Do you have any red wine?" "Yes." "Well, then, give us some. Bring it here, please." "How much do you want?" "Enough for us. Give us an ounce each in the water, and afterwards we'll see." "Obtyasov, what do you say? First with water and then by itself." The doctor and Obtyasov sat down at the counter, took off their caps, and began drinking the wine. The wine, one must admit, is terrible stuff. Bad wine. Though in your presence, it tastes like nectar. "You're enchanting, madam." "In my imagination, I kiss your hand." "I would give a lot to do so in real life," said Obtyasov. "On my honor, I'd give my life." "That's enough," said Madame Chernomordic, blushing and looking serious. "What a flirt you are, though. The doctor laughed softly, looking slyly at her. Your eyes seem to be shooting bullets. Piff-paff. I congratulate you. You've won. We are defeated. The chemist's wife looked at their rosy faces, listened to their talk, and soon she also felt very happy. Oh, she felt so cheerful. She joined in the conversation. She laughed, flirted, and even, after the customers asked many times, drank 2 ounces of wine. You officers should come in more often from the camp, she said. It's awful how boring it is here. I'm simply dying of boredom. I should think so, said the doctor angrily. Such a lovely woman, a miracle of nature, wasted in the wilds. How well Grib would have said, into the wilds, to Saratov. It's time for us to go, though. Delighted to have met you. Very. How much do we owe you? The chemist's wife raised her eyes to the ceiling and her lips moved for some time. 12 rubles 48 kopecks, she said. Obdyasov took out a fat wallet from his pocket and, after looking for some time among the notes, paid. Your husband's sleeping peacefully. He must be dreaming, he whispered, squeezing her hand before leaving. I don't like hearing silly things. What silly things? On the contrary, it's not silly at all. Even Shakespeare said, happy is he who in his youth is young. Let go of my hand. Finally, after much talking and kissing the lady's hand goodbye, the customers left the shop hesitantly, as if they were unsure if they had forgotten something. She hurried into the bedroom and sat down in the same place. She watched the doctor and the officer leave the shop lazily, walking about 20 steps away before stopping and whispering to each other. What were they saying? Her heart raced, her temples throbbed, and she didn't know why. Her heart pounded as if those 2 whispering outside were deciding her fate. 5 minutes later, the doctor left Obdyasov and walked away, while Obdyasov returned. He walked past the shop once and then again. He would stop near the door and then start walking again. Finally, the bell rang discreetly. What? Who's there? Suddenly heard the chemist's wife her husband's voice. The bell rang and you didn't hear it, he said sternly. Is this how things should be done? He got up, put on his robe, and, half asleep, shuffled in his slippers to the shop. What is it? He asked Obdyasov. Give me 4 pennyworth of peppermint lozenges. Sniffing constantly, yawning, almost falling asleep as he moved, and bumping his knees against the counter, the chemist went to the shelf and took down the jar. 2 minutes later, the chemist's wife saw Obdyasov leave the shop, and after he had taken a few steps, she saw him throw the packet of peppermints onto the dusty road. The doctor appeared from around a corner to meet him. They met, gestured to each other, and disappeared into the morning mist. How unhappy I am, said the chemist's wife, glaring angrily at her husband, who was quickly undressing to get back into bed. Oh, how unhappy I am, she repeated, suddenly bursting into bitter tears. And nobody knows, nobody knows. I forgot 4 pence on the counter, mumbled the chemist, pulling the quilt over himself. Put it in the cash register, please. And immediately he fell asleep again.